In the name of Amen, the Supreme, the All-Powerful, the one and only true Lord, and Amen we trust, as the Republic of Intellect. The real 144,000 is being gathered in this day and time, the mentalists. Menzeka Aminun to all of my mentalist brothers and sisters out there, registered members of the Republic of Intellect, and to all future mentalists who have yet to find their way home to the Republic of Intellect, which is Amen's community. I send greetings out to you, and I send peace out to you in the Amenic language by saying to you, Menzeka Aminun. Good evening, I'm your host, the intellectual NUBEN MENKARAYZZ, and this is Mentellect Radio, and tonight we're going to be discussing the real reason why black people will always be seen as a threat in this society. The reason why black people will be seen as a threat in this society and all societies on the planet is because you're the natives of all these lands on the planet. You were in these lands before the white man was, the Asian man was, the East Indian man was. You was in all of these places. So-called black people, a.k.a. bronze people, the Amen race, they were in these places before all of these other people came out of the caves. When they were created and sent up into the caves, they were not allowed to be in land masses and areas and things like that. So they were basically exiled to caves. These are cave people. Your so-called human race today, your Caucasians, your East Indians, and Asians are cave people. They are cave dwellers. They were put in caves after they were produced out of the water. They were taken into the caves. They were not meant to be in cities and surrounding civilizations and civilizations that we were building. They were not meant to be there. Right? They were supposed to be bred as work animals or work beings or work people. Just work beings. That's what they were bred for. Now, this may sound racist, and people may take it that way, but it's really not. It's the reality. I told you, humans were bred to be work like two-legged animals to work. That's all. The Amen beings wanted to breed a two-legged animal. So again, they took their Amen genetic and bred it or crossbred it with the animal genetic to produce the humans. And once they were produced, they were sent off into the caves to live. Right? The early humans, the reason why they were put in the caves because they were so wild, because a lot of them still had that animal mentality, animal instinct in them, that they had to be separated from the civilized. They had to be separated from the civilized. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad talked about this somewhat, but he didn't go into great depth, and he couldn't go into how they were created or how we created them. But they had to be separated from us. Right? They had to be separated, and they had to be domesticated, just like how you do any other animal. That was the whole point. This is why they were separated in caves. And when the Adam and Eve story goes, when God is talking to them, what you're really hearing, go back in your Genesis and really listen to what's being said to the Adam and Eve, which was really your early East Indians and all those, because that story happened over and over again. Your early East Indians, your Asians and Caucasians, because that's really what the Adam and Eve story is, right? Some of your cloned out Africans, but really not even really the cloned out Africans, not them. More the early humans, which was your East Indians, your dark race or your black race of the human race, your Asians, your yellow Asians, and your pale Caucasians. Those were the first set of humans that were created on the planet. See, we as the Amen were creating them and breeding them and putting them in caves, right? So when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad talked about the whole island of Patmos and Mr. Yaqub and the 59,999 dissatisfied so-called black people that were basically cloned till they became the so-called white race, that somewhat has validity. I ain't gonna tell you how he really knew that story. Well, I can tell you a little bit, because I've been debating on a broadcast I wanted to do on the teachings of the Nation of Islam, but I've been kind of holding back on that. I don't really want to go into it, so I know what it really is. And I'm not trying to be facetious or anything, but what I'm saying is that the teaching basically talked about the breeding of the human race. That's all. That's the Adam and Eve story. That's the Yaqub story. That's the breeding of the human race from the clone black race, because that's where your human race really comes from the clone black race. The clone black race is the genetic blueprint for the human race. Okay? We took from the cloned black race and the animals that were starting to be genetically modified here on the planet Earth, and we crossbred the clone blacks with the animals, and we produce the human race. All right? So when you hear about the Adam and Eve story where God comes, the serpent comes and is talking to Eve and whatnot, and telling her, you know, to do this, that, and the third, and God is talking to her, and they say that God is talking to Adam and Eve, what that is, that's the Amen race who are basically domesticating the humans. That is an Amen being. That's not some being from the sky, and we're not talking, that's actual beings, Amen beings, us coming to these naked East Indians, or it could have been your naked East Indians, and your Asian, but basically we're starting with them, right? And us telling them, because that's who your Adam and Eve, that would be your Adam and Eve describing, and that would be your so-called Asiatic black people. The Asiatic black people are East Indians and Hindus. That's black people. That's your Asiatic black people. So the Adam and Eve story is really Hindus. That's East Indians. And the serpentine people that are talking to them in the Bible is us, the Amenic people, the first civilizations that were set up here. We were basically telling these East Indians, right, about the rules, because we were trying to groom them, the early humans. We were trying to groom them to work. So they were kept separate from us because there were so many genetic defects with them that they had to be, you know, and still to this day it comes out in their genes where they're, you know, you'll have animal genetics. They have hind legs, some of them walking on all fours, some of them all covered in fur, and that goes even down to the so-called white man. You'll see them, they have hair all over their back like apes, right? Hair all over their back. They got to get electrolysis to get the hair out their back. A lot of them are born with tails. That's because of the genetic splicing between us and the animals. Sometimes that animal genetic comes out more and more in them, but it comes out more in their hair, like I said. But anyway, so we, being the first people here in the Americas, everybody that came after us in the society were immigrants. That goes for your Asians who crossed over the Bering Straits and mixed in with us and got these Asian-looking dark Native Americans. That goes for the Mexicans, which are a mix of the East Indians and the Asians. Right? That's why you see a lot of these Mexicans got slanted eyes, and they are part of that Indo-Asiatic bloodline. They're part of it. And out of them, the Caucasians as well. Anybody that came here, right? Because if you notice, everybody that comes here, whatever race it is, they make sure that they have some sort of animosity for so-called black people. Why? Because, again, black people are the first people in America. We're the only ones who are not immigrants here. We're the only ones who are not immigrants in this society. It has nothing, like I said, they told me it's a color thing, why they hate black people and why this, that. No. This is not a color thing. Because, again, they don't do this to the East Indians. Why don't the white man get at the East Indians? They just as dark as we are. But I told you before, they got that same straight hair, and the East Indians come from someplace else. They're not native to America. The East Indians are not native to America. The so-called white man is trying to make them native to America. This is why he called the so-called Native Americans Indians, because he's trying to make the Asiatics, the East Indians, native to America, because that's where his bloodline comes from. That's where his bloodline comes from. You see, that's directly where his bloodline comes from the East Indians, and the East Indians come from us. So really all their bloodlines come from the black clones that we set forward on the earth. That's where their bloodline comes from. But if you notice, like I said, they don't have no problems with the East Indians. Why? They just as dark as we are. Because, again, everybody here is an immigrant. They want America to be an immigrant country. They want the Americans to be immigrants. And, again, being that we are the natives, people or any standing government, because the government, the foundation, the ones who got all the records of our people, they got the records of who was here first, man. The American government know all the people that's in power right now, in so-called power, and American government, the elites, all these people, they know who were the first civilization of this society called America. They know about our people. They know that we are the descendants of the Olmecs. They know we are the descendants of the Inca. They know that this was an established society that was not African, that was not tribal, that it was a real governmental system here that started from the East and came into this part of America, they already know. And we came into Mexico. We've been all over Mexico, South America, North America. We was all over this place. We done been in New York before the so-called white man. Every part of America we was in first, and we was trading here first. And we was doing this for hundreds and hundreds of years before the white man even saw this part of the land, before anybody even knew what a Caucasian was worldwide, before they started getting around. But see, we already knew who they were. In the ancient world, we bred them. And now, like I said, in this day and time, black people still don't get it, that the reason why you are always going to be seen as a threat is because when people come to a land where there are natives, the first people that lived here, they always know that it is a possibility, or that there's a probability that that land will end back up in the hands of the people who they took it from, or the people who they claimed it from. It will end right back up in the native people's hands. The native people is so-called black people who are being falsely called African Americans here. You are the natives here, not these so-called Indians. That's a lie the white man told, all that Indians and because again, the reason why he referred to them as Indians, because he saw dark-skinned people here. But so he wanted to make the dark-skinned people here, or try to relate them to East Indians. And he wanted to make the so-called black people here, he wanted to relate them to African. That's how he did it, because that's how he did it in the ancient world. He called anybody that was dark-skinned African, and anybody with that dark skin who was here in America, he called them Indians. But he didn't know what to make of the so-called black people that was already here in America with the woolly hair. They are the real natives. They didn't come from Africa through bondage and through slavery. They are the real natives. The white man knows that over time, you will eventually take this land back. Right? Through natural osmosis, whatever. All things eventually go back to how they are naturally. That's all. And they know that. That's why the threat is always you, especially you so-called black men. It's not the so-called black woman, because the so-called black woman, she's under the control of the so-called white man. She's under the control of the beast. And the whole thing is they you can look at how the so-called black woman wants to assimilate into this American setup. She wants to assimilate. That's why she'll perm her hair, straighten her hair. She'll wear blonde wigs like the white woman, because that's her way of showing that she's willing to assimilate and go with the structure in the system. Because a lot of times the woman is not visionary, and she's not a rider like that, especially the so-called black woman. She has not been a rider like that. A lot of them haven't. You see? She shows that she's willing to go along with the current setup just so that she can survive. That's why she'll wear the blonde wig on her head. She'll mix her seed, marry with the white man. Other races try to assimilate in. You see, that's why the so-called white man, he will use the black woman against his own woman against him. He'll use the black woman against the white man will use the black woman against the black man. And now you see in these ads, they showing the white man with the black woman. They showing his children with he's holding your children now. Why are they showing that? Because they see you, your children, the very way that your offspring comes forward. They want to take hold of that, because they know that your children represent the future. The future evolution of rulership comes out in your children, who they're going to be, because that's how they take hold of your future. They take your children. That's why early on in this system, they want to educate your children, because they want to brainwash or control them to think as slaves, as subservient to the system that they put in place. They don't ever want them to know that they are the true natives of this land, and that the so-called white man and all these other races are immigrants, and they are invaders to this land called America. America at one time was not, they didn't even say that America at one point in time was named after Amerigo Vespucci, and I'm waiting on his brother to give me information on why the white man really called this place America. I forgot what the brother said, what the word America really meant. Then they stopped teaching that, and then they start trying to teach Amerigo Vespucci at one point. Then they stopped teaching Amerigo Vespucci. You don't know nothing about this person. But they were fully aware when they came here, George Washington, all these Caucasians came here, they were fully aware that this was a bronze society. This was a so-called black society. This was not an Indian society, as they call it. This was not no Indian society. This was not no Native no Native American Indian society. It was a black society, a bronze society. And these people were the descendants of the ancient Olmecs and the Inca, Aztec, and Mayan. This is where their descendants went. Their descendants are falsely being called African American today. Falsely being told that they came over here through slave ships. Falsely told that their skin is black and white. They're being called black people because that's the color of their skin. And that's a lie. That is a lie. That is a caste system identification. Black and white are identifications that they use in a caste system, and a system of casting people who's going to be the ruling class and who is going to be the slave class. That's why they came up with the term black and white. Black and white is a caste system identities. And so-called bronze people, you know, so-called Negroes, so-called African Americans, you were classified a long time ago, as soon as the beast set this order up, that you would be cast as the black people, the people who would be and perpetually at the bottom, who would never be acknowledged as the true settlers and the first civilization in this land that they came and copied from. You see, they're never going to tell you that. They're not going to tell you that. That these people came here, adopted your customs and your ways. They adopted our customs and our ways. We didn't adopt theirs. That's a lie. They didn't have any customs and whatnot. They didn't come over here in England with no customs. And then whatever customs they had is what they got from the Moors. Whatever customs these people got in England and Europe, they got from the Moors. Whatever civilization they got from the Moors. They didn't have anything before we came there. We had those lands first, just like we had the Americas first. And they always know when you come to a land, the natives can always eventually retake that land. They know that. That's why there's always going to be hostility. See, they don't got no hostility toward the East Indians. That's their people. They ain't got no hostility toward the Asians. That's their people. They got honorary white status or Caucasian status here in the society. You don't know that. The Arabs, the East Indians, the Asians, they got honorary Caucasian status, but everybody has an issue with you. What have you done? What has the so-called, ask yourself, what if so-called black people, have y'all ever asked yourself that? What have you done that was so bad to make everybody hate you? What have you done? Think about this. What have you done so bad to make everybody hate you? You see? Nothing. What you've done was they mad because you were here in this land, and they know that they feel threatened by the fact that you're here. What you done was you was born a native. You was born a native of this land. It ain't nothing to do with you was born the wrong color. You was born this. You was born no. You was born the natural color. You were born the natural color. They wanted to make you something else. They wanted to make you something black, something blacken you up. They wanted to make you something that was unrecognizable. You see? Because when somebody calls you a black person, that means that you are shrouded in something. You are shrouded in darkness. You are shrouded in mystery. This is why they call you black people. They want to blacken up your image, darken your image so that you can't see who you really are or know who you really are. This is why they call you black people. People who are in a state of ignorance, darkness, void. Exactly. This is why they do that. They know that, like I said, eventually you're going to figure out, you know what I'm saying? And they don't want that to happen. They know that you're going to eventually figure out that you are the true Native Americans here, not the so-called Indians, not the white man. None of these other people are no natives here. They keep now the white man trying to lie and come up with this thing about, well, actually, now he tried to lie, and then they stopped that real quick. But, well, actually, if you look back in history, the Vikings were here, well, no, the early Vikings, a lot, they were black, too. The early Vikings were black, so-called black bronze people, your early Vikings. You see? They don't want to tell you all that. We was the first everything here on this planet. The first Romans, the first all of that here. Then we started mixing, and then the cave people started coming down out of the caves, and they started apprenticing and being apprentices amongst us. And as they started coming down, we started cleaning them up and whatnot. They, time went on. They kept procreating and getting the genetics in, and their bloodline improved over time. They started getting more civilized. We taught them how to speak and things like that, covered them up, tried to basically, clean them up. And they eventually, and brought them into society, and they eventually learned our ways and replaced us. That's all. They learned our ways, and they replaced us. You see, that's how that went. Yeah, they were black Vikings. Yeah, they were. They were black Vikings. Yes, they were. The Norsemen, the early ones, yeah. You see, that's how they always do. And then after they come into your society and learn your ways, they turn right on you. Once they get in the seat of power, they get some weapons and stuff like that. They weaponize your areas. They learn your ways. They turn right on you, and they take over. Next thing you know, they telling you, oh, that we was here first, and then they start making it into a racial thing. You see, then they create the whole black and white system. You see, then they create that. You see, and they make sure that you stay powerless, because that's how they make sure you stay powerless. They call you black people, because black is an identification code to all people all over the world, that you are the people who are to be seen as a threat, and that you are always to be kept powerless, and that you are always to be worked against, and that you are never to be trusted, because you are the natives of this land. So again, you are never to be trusted, even to this day. I don't care if it's Donald Trump, Biden, all of them, they know. Like I said, they already know, and they have the history. They know who the Olmecs are. They know they set this up first. They know that you are the descendants of these people. They know. They know. You see. And I'm going to say it's a lot of the so-called Africans that come over here. That's how you know we not from Africa, or we not what they call African and whatnot, coming from no slave ship. Because if you notice, they treat the Africans a lot different who come from different places in Africa. They treat them a lot different than the so-called African Americans who were born here. I pointed this out before. I said, why do you think it is they chose Barack Obama to be the president, but they wouldn't choose no so-called African American who was born here? Because the African Americans are born here, the so-called slave class, as they call it. Because when they refer to you as slave class here, they're not really talking about slaves of the bondage. They're talking about the people who they made slaves here in their own country. That's what they're talking about. The people who they designated to be the bottom of the barrel. They're not calling you slaves because they brought you over here and from Africa. No, they're talking about slavery here that they put upon you in this country. But that's really with your so-called black history. Why you think your so-called black history start here in America? They tell you about slavery. All they tell you is you was brought from Africa. They don't know where in Africa. They claim, they always say the West, the West, the West. They always notice they never say the East. They always say the West, the West, the West, right? And they lie and tell you all black people came from the western part of Africa or wherever, or the central part and all this other not, but stay away from the East. They tell you that, and they say brought you over here on slave ships, and that they subdued you and put you in chains and brought you here and blah, blah, blah. No, but that's not really what happened. What had happened was they subdued you and enslaved you in your own country. They started forcing you by the gun to be slaves for them. In this country, they gave you a slave class. As soon as they started calling you black people, they had already designated that you were going to be the slave class in this country. As soon as they started with that, they already designated that you would be the slave class. And that you would never, and it was even a point where these Caucasians would walk around in mobs and they would tell black people, so-called black people, don't you say that you are Native American, don't say that you from America, don't you say that. They would tell them, don't say that you from America, that you was here, you are African, you black. They would force you to say that. You see. They will force you to say that you better not say that you're native. Why you think, like I said, so many old black people, they don't really have no stories of being from Africa. Like I said, just because you see one fool-ass Negro like that clown that came on here the last time talking about what he researched. No, nigga, I don't care about what you researched. Tell me what your family told you. Don't tell me what they heard from some ancestral DNA BS, because that ancestral DNA is BS. It is. That guy, Skip Gates, Henry Louis Gates, he's a phony, and he's a liar, and he knows ancestry DNAs that he was pushing a phony, and that's just some scam to get black people to keep pushing this lie that black people came over here on slave ships. Yet they never show you these slave ships. You know, where all these slave ships at? Wouldn't they have kept them somewhere, stored up, and have them in a damn history place somewhere, ported somewhere where these are the slave ships that blacks was brought over here on? Why can't we see these slave ships? Why can't black people go and see these slave ships? What happened to them? They usually would have stuff like that. You know, the white man, he don't throw nothing away. You mean to tell me he could find ships that the Egyptians had thousands of years ago, but he can't never present these slave ships? You mean to tell me that? He can't present these slave ships, but he could tell you where the Egyptians came, what kind of boats they had. They got all that. But you can't tell me something. That was thousands and thousands of years ago. But you can't tell me about some ships that supposedly brought black people over here over 400 or 500 years ago? That ain't no time. Because it's a lie. It's a damn lie. They ain't did nothing but it was black people over here. Some came over here with the British, right? Some came over with the British, right, as indentured servants. They was just bringing indentured servants and people over here to work. It wasn't no black and white things up here. It was just indentured servants. Then as soon as the so-called white man got over here, then they started pushing, and then they started getting a foothold in on certain parts of it, like they always do when they gentrify something. They came in being friends with the so-called black people. They wasn't pushing no racism. They came in trying to be cool with the natives and whatnot, like they always do. Then over time, when they get a foothold in, like they do when they gentrify any place, then they start setting up their class system. They start to set up their class system, and anybody who's not their color or their race or whatever the case is, you gonna go at the goddamn bottom of it. You gonna go and they gonna set you up the class system, and that's all the black and white thing came, because the whole black and white thing is relatively new. They didn't start with this whole white thing. I think the word white they didn't start using until like the mid to the I want to say the end of the 1700s, the beginning of the 1800s. They didn't start using that term white men. They didn't start using that term. And then the so-called black people. You see, they didn't start using that terminology. So that's how that came about. That's how that came about. And they know that those of us who are here in this society, who cannot trace our heritage, because all that lie about we are from West Africa, or they telling you they could tell you come from Ireland. They tell you anything. Like I said, that lie about them being able to take some spit from your mouth and tell you what DNA your people from. That's a load of bull. That's a load of BS. You see, that's just another way, and they made sure they point you right back to Africa, or they'll point you to Europe someplace. They'll never say that your people was here as Native Americans. They won't say that, because they teach that the so-called Native Americans are those so-called Asiatic, Indo-Asiatic people. You know, those ones who look like they damn Mexican. They could either be from Mexican. Notice that. Why is the Mexicans, the so-called Mexicans, because they don't show you the so-called black Mexicans, the real Mexicans, not some fake Mexicans that's over there, the East Indians and all of them, the ones who came just like the white man came here. I'm talking about the real Mexicans, the bronze ones. Mexico was a bronze city, man. That's a bronze country. Puerto Rico was a bronze country, man. You see, the natives there are bronze people, so-called black people, before slavery. They don't show you that. They don't show you that because, again, they're trying to lock it into the mind that this is not your land. They're trying to lock it into your mind. They always want it in your mind that this is not your land, that you are a stranger in this land and whatnot, that you came here through slavery. We brought you here. We whooped your ass. We taught you our culture and our ways, all that BS. And this is what they teach you in school. And this is what they indoctrinate your children with, these lies. Yeah. You see? They don't want you to see all that. Look at all the racism in places like Puerto Rico and Mexico. These are bronze places. This is why the white man didn't want to claim Puerto Rico, because he knew it was the majority of black people, the so-called black people in Puerto Rico. This is why he let Puerto Rico go through hell like that, and then they're supposed to be a state, and they let it go through hell because your so-called black people are still there. The majority of so-called black people are there. You see, they are programmed mentally to take down anything or disregard anything that makes you native, right? But they take down anything that shows you as the first or the foundational people here. They don't want that because it doesn't work. Exactly. In Cuba as well. Cuba is also a bronze island. You see? The reason why they took down that guy Batista, you ever heard this guy who was in charge of the guy who was in charge of Cuba before Fidel Castro? You know Fidel Castro's not even Cuban. He's an Italian. Fidel Castro's Italian. His family came from Italy, and he came over there and he took over. But the guy who was there first, he was Batista. He was a so-called black man. You see, he was so-called. They ran him out of there. You see, he was doing business with the mob and all them other people as a so-called black man. The guy Batista, and they brought Castro in. Castro's an Italian. They don't tell you that though. You see. And the mob and them probably knew that. They probably tried to feel like, they tried to do a deal with him and tried to appeal to the fact they know he was Italian and whatnot, and they thought they could deal. He probably told them, "Nah, well, I'm Cuban," and that's why they wanted to kill him. But they know his lineage and they know his heritage. They know he's not native to that area. You see, they know his people's Italian, aka white. You see? So be mindful of that. Be mindful of that. Be mindful of the fact, like I said, South America too. Canada, all of that. That's ours. The whole earth is ours, but this is our land. They want you to keep believing that this is their land. No, they set up colonies in your land. They set up colonies, ant colonies, like I say, ant colonies in your land. What do ants do when they set up colonies? They set up colonies and they protect their colonies. All the, they know that America is a colony, is a bronze country that they colonized. America is nothing but a bronze country that they colonized. That's all. That's what America is. It's a bronze country, so-called black country that they colonized, just like they did South America and all these other places. Keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. And they know that eventually that can only go, but so they have to, when they set up a political system, they know they have to keep passing policies to keep that in effect. They have to keep renewing and passing policies to keep that in effect. You see? They have to keep on renewing and passing policies to keep that in effect, to let so that they let you know that the natives don't know who's really what or who's who. Because if you notice, the so-called white man right now, he'll try and make sure that he's making himself the face of the so-called Native American. That's why he put the so-called Native American on reservations, the so-called Asians and all them, and he mixes in with them. He mixes in. When he came here, he started making sure he mixed in with the Native American, the Asian-looking ones. He made sure he mixed in with the Asian and the lighter skinned ones. As soon as he came here, he started mixing in with them. So as soon as they got here, like by the time the 1800s came in, so the face of a lot of the darker Native Americans had changed. A lot of them were mixed out mulattoes. And this is why, if you see today, the white man will show you, he'll tell you, a lot of these Caucasians, they'll tell you that they descended to the Native Americans. You see, and a lot of them have come through that bloodline because when they came over here as settlers, they mixed in. The men took the women and whatnot and put babies in them, and they became tribal leaders. Some of them, went off into America and took the name of their Caucasian father, and they gave them their land and stuff like that. But they have ties to that whole Native American thing because they hooked up with these people. They did that. That was a way for them to inseminate their bloodline into this land. You see, and they even went as far as to get with a lot of them got with the so-called black woman. You see, that's why in society, when they took the so-called black woman and the black man in slavery, they always had in their mind that they would mix their seed with the black woman. You see, they would mix their seed and they would have their mulatto children, and they would put their mulatto children over the rest of the bronze people that they caught or had in bondage in those areas. But that's the real reason. It has nothing to do with no race, has nothing to do with your dark skin as to why you're seen as a threat. That's a lie. It has nothing to do with that. What it is that you're the natives to this country. This is your country. They have a colony in your country. And you have a lot of these pro-blacks who are being paid off, who are being paid to promote this lie that we black people that came over here from Africa in some slave ships, yet you never see the slave ships. Where are the slave ships at? If you claiming that you brought people back and forth into this country for over 400 years, you mean to tell me you only even have one slave ship, or all you have is two? You should have a fleet of slave ships. There should be a place where them slave ships are docked up somewhere. You mean to tell me you can't show us one? You can't show one slave ship? If the white man actually had slave ships, he would show you, but he don't want to tell you that all he did was start kidnapping people and forcing people at gun to be slaves here. He don't want to tell you that. Hell, he was doing that with the so-called Indians. Now that should tell you right there. When he got here, he started trying to force the so-called Indians, and that's documented. He started trying to force them to be slaves. So he was trying to grab anybody who he came across by the gun to force them to be slaves, kidnapping them, going out and trying to kidnapping them, and that's how he got black people. Wherever there were black people living in the neighboring places, down south, whatever, he'd take young girls, young boys, and whatnot. That's how they knew how to speak. That's how they knew how to speak English. Because they was around these people, and they would just start taking the government. There was really no government set up that was, especially those who was going to regulate that. They was like, well, whatever you do, if you take them by force, they could be your slaves. And that's all they did. That's all they did. The government okayed it that they could take people as property, the natives here, especially the natives. You see? Because again, they tried the so-called Indian, and the Indians they couldn't do the work. When they would fight and take the Indians and destroy, they burn down their stuff and whatnot, kill them. They would try to take them as the men and women slaves on the plantation, but they wouldn't do the work, or they would run away. And it was hard to catch them because they knew the land. And a lot of our people ran away too. We knew the land, but like I said, that's why they would try to take young ones. They didn't want older ones. They wanted the young. They wanted children. That's why they tell you in slavery, they made sure they wanted to sell your children away. Once the children got of a certain age and whatnot, they wanted to sell your children because it's easier to make slaves out of the children. It's easier to make bed wenches out of the little girls when they get of a certain age. They're used to knowing that they got to pop the master or do whatever they want because, again, they got to breed that in you. It's hard to breed that into an older person. That's why when the children got of a certain age, they sold your children. They didn't want you because they figured around 13, 14, 11, 12, 13 years old, you could start teaching them a certain thing. They know up to a certain point, to where you could start teaching, they made sure they sold them off. Because you would start teaching them. You see? They broke up families because they didn't want to have no direct family bloodline, because families, once you start letting families stay together, then they start building up a oral history and an oral tradition and a custom, and next thing you know, that starts community. Next thing you know, if you let these people and their families stay in those areas and those communities, next thing you know, they're going to eventually overtake your community. That's why they broke away to sold the children off and all that. Exactly. They kidnapped young black children, all that. Trained them at an early age to be slaves. And this is what you got to this day. This still goes on today. Let me take a call. 832, you on air.
Okay, so around this time, I guess, when you're saying that this is when the Amen started to transmit to the Caucasians as they started to overtake us. Now, my question is, because something doesn't make sense to me. I hear what you're saying. Now, this information, like I just recently started hearing about it, maybe the last 2 to 5 years, about us being the natives, which makes 100% sense, but you don't see any of that information being written down or passed on orally in any of our families, and even in the papers and the books of Frederick Douglass or Booker T. Washington or any of these people. None of them talk about us being the natives. So I'm wondering, as the Amen began to transmit information to the Caucasians and the humans to overtake us, did they simultaneously block our transmission and basically kind of wipe that out of our memories that we weren't even able to recollect it? And now, just now, we're starting to get that transmission again?
Well,
because it doesn't make sense how we just
people. When you mention people, first and foremost, Claude Anderson brought it out about the Folsom people and the people that were already here in the Americas. See, all that's coming out. People like Frederick Douglass and all those the people you named, Booker T. Washington, these people they are boule. They are your boule, and they are sworn to certain secrets about the society in order to keep their positions. They know that we didn't come from Africa. They already knew that. Okay, they are complicit with the lie. A lot of these so-called prominent blacks were complicit with the lie that we came from Africa. They know about the Olmecs. They know about the Folsom people. They know about the black people that was here before, the so-called black people that was here before Columbus. They know about that. They've been amongst the Caucasians. They'll tell them all, and the Caucasians, like I said, they used to go and tell black people, so-called black people, that they better not say that they natives or that they was from this country. They started telling them not to say that, so they pushed them as Africans, because that's how that's how they promoted any so-called black person at that time. They was just calling you Africans. You see, so then, like I said, the slave trade that they tried to do here. The slave trades, well, like I said, they tried it a couple of times. That they tried to do here, they were not successful. So they abandoned that. However, what that did was it gave them a foundation for the story that they brought us over here from Africa, just because they did that once or twice. But that does not break down all the millions of so-called black people that are here. They try to just tie it to, oh, y'all just got here by slavery, just because they sailed a couple of slaves here into this country. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that makes sense. So now, so these Boule guys, they have a higher level of intelligence, so I can't see them as being clones. So what was their motivation?
What higher level of intelligence? They don't have no higher level of intelligence. These are nothing but puppets.
I'm talking about like the Frederick Douglasses and those of that crop. Or were they actual bronze people, or were they clones? Or basically, what was their motivation for selling out their own people? Is what I'm trying to understand that motivation.
Well, again, they would rather, it's just like anything, these people would rather have a place amongst the so-called ruling class, because, see, they know, a lot of these people know that they are descendants of the Moors and the people that came here. So what the white man does is he'll say, okay, I'll acknowledge you as a descendant of the native people here, the Moors and the Olmecs and all these other people, but you can't tell all the rest of your people that. I'll just have a small enclave, a small group of you who I'll acknowledge through the boule as foundational, but not that it mean nothing, but it'll just mean they'll treat them a little different. But they can't ever tell so-called black people that you are the descendants of those people here, that you actually are the real Native Americans. They can't tell you that. They know, but they can't. They'll never go and promote that. They got to promote the African lie.
Man, deep. Okay.
Because then that means if they tell the truth, then that means that they know that they then have to admit that the so-called black people basically showed them how to survive and live. When they talk about the so-called Indians basically showing them how to, feeding them and showing them how to survive and live and make it here, they talking about black people. They're not talking about no Native Americans. That's a lie. They're talking about black people. Okay? That's when they talking about the so-called Native Americans or the Indians or whatever they call, because they was just calling, that's another reason why they was calling the so-called Native Americans, our people, Indian, is because they wanted to liken us because of our dark skin. They wanted to liken us unto the East Indians. You see what I'm saying? They want that was their way of likening us unto. In other words, I ain't gonna tell y'all that y'all so-called black or American or Negro or whatever they wanted to call us. I'm not gonna say that, so I'll just say y'all because of your dark skin, you East Indians. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
That's where the whole Indian thing comes from. The Indian thing came from them trying to, they were trying to link us with the East Indians.
Right.
Okay. Rather than tell us the truth that these was actually so-called black people with feathers in their head that they was talking to. Some of them had curly hair, woolly hair, and things like that. They don't want to say that. That don't work right with the history they trying to push. So they'll just say y'all Indians, y'all aka East Indians.
Yeah, well, they have that clip of Martin Luther King saying that we're subjects in our own land, or slaves are subjugated in our own land, something like that. And
there you go. There you go. And he was a boule. He was a boule nigga. So obviously they know. Right. The boule niggas know. They know that we ain't no African Americans. In fact, that term African American come from Jesse Jackson. He a boule nigga. So they know. They know we didn't come from no Africa. They know we the real Native Americans here who were falsely called black people, African Americans, and Indians. They didn't call us. They didn't call us Indians or whatever. Like I said, because if you look at the so-called East Indian, especially back then, before the white men started mixing in with them. But if you look at the so-called East Indian, because this guy Columbus thought he was in India, because like I said, they saw the dark-skinned people here. The East Indians was, for the most part, in that time, they was dark. They was just as dark as we was, but they just had the straight hair. Some of them had the curly or woolly hair because it was black people living in India too. So when they came here, they wanted to associate us with Indians. That's where the whole term of Indians come from.
Yep.
They ain't gonna say those. They didn't want to say these were Africans already here. They didn't want to say that. They didn't want to promote America as an African country. So what they going to do? Promote it as a what? An Indian country. They rather promote it as an Indian country rather than a so-called African country.
Right.
All right?
Okay, cool. Yeah, well, thanks for explaining that.
Thank you for calling in, buddy.
All right.
All right, we're going to take a little bit of a break and take a little pause for the cause. And we'll be right back. I was just showing an article where this black mother allowed her 4-year-old son to be transitioned here. This happened in America. She allowed her 4-year-old son to be transitioned into a female. And I didn't watch the whole story, but this is rather apropos, meaning very ironic and yet at the same time appropriate. I should say it's very apropos, meaning appropriate for what I'm saying. This is why the so-called black man is seen as a threat, because again, a native man in his society always has a strong tie and connection to his society. A native man, I'm going to say this again, because keep in mind, our ancestors had settled this land and set up the first government here thousands of years ago. And our governments were in existence for hundreds and hundreds of years, way before the so-called Asians came here and mixed in with us. I'm talking about the Inca Empire that lasted there, and they only estimate up to 500 years, which is longer than America. The Olmecs, which was years, thousands, probably like damn near going over 800-900 years, probably or more. The Olmecs were here, so-called black people, bronze people, have been an active and live culture here in the society. In fact, I said this before, and I'll say it again, Native American customs and culture is really bronze culture. That comes from the Olmecs and the Inca. That's what that is. All of what you're calling Native American or American Indian customs, from the feathers to the headdresses and things like that, all that comes from the Inca and the Aztecs. All of it. You can look back and you can see so-called black people with feathers and headpieces and stuff like that. You see that all the time. If you look back, they want to whitewash it and rather make these people East Indian or Indians. I told you that. But they know that the black, so-called black man, falsely being called an African American, falsely being called black, the so-called black man is the true founder and the first civilization. The first civilization was built by him in the society. You see, the first civilization was built by him. You cannot allow the men. That's like saying if we as so-called black people went to, let's just say we went to Scotland or Ireland right now, and we decided to take over Ireland or Scotland. First thing we had to do is subdue the men and the women, but take down the men. And we couldn't take all the men down. We have to, go through a thing of indoctrinating the men. But the focus is always going to be, no matter where you set up, the focus is, and the worry is always going to be on the men, not on the native women, on the native men. Because the native women can be made to, over time, the native women can be made to adapt. The native women can be made to adapt. You see, the native men cannot. They're taught that the native men cannot adopt because they cannot adapt, because the ones, they're always going to have that masculine energy, that masculine streak, which is to rule. And that's what men want to do by nature. Men want to rule. In some way, shape, or form, men will always want to rule. They will always want to be in control of a civilization. So this is what the whole problem is always going to be between the white man and the so-called white man and the so-called black man. The white man knows that it is in your nature. It is in your nature to rule. They know it's in your nature to rule, to be dominant. They know that. And that's why you're a threat, black man. You are a threat, so-called black man, because the white man can feel your dominant energy. He can feel it. This is why he makes sure he takes it and uses it to his advantage. This is why he makes sure that 75% of his NFL, his National Football League, where some of the best athletes on the earth are, is black men. That's black men. You see, they make sure that this basketball, which is, I'm pretty sure, like 80 and 90% are bronze men. They make sure they take the best ones of you, the strongest ones of you, and put you in sports. You see, they put you in sports. They would have you in slavery to be breeders, where you would have sex with the women and breed stronger slaves, but they would always utilize you as slavery. You see. And a lot of you are still strong. A lot of you are strong like that still today. That's why, the heavy breeding was going on. And they say the place where they get the most NFL football players and whatnot, and that's Southern Florida, Texas region and whatnot. Because, again, our people were known to be very strong and warrior-like in those sections. As the Olmecs, the Folsom people, we were known to be very strong. And like I said, that is in our genetics to be that way. They know that the men have a dominating and ruling class mentality. They're going to eventually want to rule by nature. They're going to eventually want to rule again. Right now, this mindset is in them of being slaves and servants. This is why they always show you the so-called white man. They always got to constantly drill it into your mind that the white man is over you, that you are here to serve the white man, that you are under him, that he brought you in here in slavery. They got to constantly keep reintroducing that to your mind. So just in case over time when that natural inclination comes in the mind of the man to want rulership or to want power or want control of something, they have to constantly remind you through so-called history and the education system young that the white man is in charge, the system is white, you were brought here as slaves, you're supposed to submit, and you're supposed to basically assimilate into that order. Assimilate into that order as black people. Assimilate as a black man, like your black woman. You see? That's why we got the weave kit for your black woman, because she wants to assimilate. She wants to get into alignment in her role as the black woman, a.k.a. the colored version of the white woman. She has already submitted. This is why you can see the so-called black woman with the damn perm. Why you think Madam C.J. Walker, they made her multi-millionaire in society? Because they knew they really wanted to push it across for the black women to have their hair permed and straightened and whatnot like white women, because that was a way to get the black woman to assimilate, to basically not be in alignment with the so-called black man. Hell, they had the so-called black man perming his hair too. They wanted you to assimilate, even though you would never really truly assimilate into this, but they just basically wanted you to assimilate in your place as a black person. When they tell black people to assimilate, so-called black people to assimilate into this society, they mean they want you to assimilate as black people, as African Americans, which is really, that's code word for slave, servant. Right, person of second class. That's really what that means. When they get you to submit to being black people, when they get you to submit to being African Americans, that's really you being told to submit to being second class citizens, and that you submit to the order of white and black, and that you submit to the order that white is in charge, and that you as blacks are servants and beneath them. That's what you submit to when you say you're black people. So when people are telling us to call ourselves black and African American, don't trust them niggas. Do not trust them. The ones out here who still pushing this black thing, after NUBEN MENKARAYZZ had to come and say, look at our skin. Hello, our skin is not black, people. We don't have black skin. Why are we being called black? We are not black people. We did not come from no Africa. You understand? We was here in America first. So when NUBEN MENKARAYZZ points that out, and I've been pointing this out for the last, I don't know how many years, since I've been talking, 10 plus years, and yet my shows got heard by all these people. Now you start these niggas come up here talking about, oh well, we native, but they still holding on to this black and African thing. Why is that? Because a lot of them are programmed by the beast, and a lot of them are on the payroll of the beast to keep this lie going that we came over here from Africa and slave ships, and that our skin is black, and that they basically want us to fit into that narrative, that false narrative. They want us to fit into the slave narrative. Notice that terminology, the slave narratives. Didn't they come out with something on TV, PBS, the slave narratives? Where they had these so-called celebrity niggas reading some so-called slave literature. Notice that? They had you read some slave. Never know literature or any writings where they can remember where they came. They was brought over here from Africa as slaves. Never none of that. Nobody remember none of that. Just we got sold to this one. We got sold to that one. We got sold. Just that. You see, you never get told that. So they want to keep pushing the slave narrative. You see. You have people up there, like I said, whenever they show you, and I keep telling y'all, whenever they show you in these slave movies, black people on auction blocks being sold, those look just like American black people. They don't look like no Africans. I told you that. The people they show you, that they look like whenever they show you the image of slaves being sold on the auction block, those look like American black people. And they look like they done been abused and raped and traumatic. They done been through something traumatic, which is what they would do. They would kidnap these people and put them through a whole thing of, breaking them down mentally. Like they'll take the women, like take the young girls and put them and have them work and rape them and stuff like that. Do all kinds of stuff, beat them, rape them, and whatnot. Do it to the men, to the boys, so that they put them through hell, beat the hell out, and then brand them, then put them on the auction block. That's how you break them down and make them slaves. You break them mentally by doing something traumatic, animalistic, and ritualistic brutality from animals. Animals who knew how to traumatize you. You see, and that's done today. It's still done today. That's why they'll show you in the news a black person getting shot by a white person. That's done to traumatize you. That's done to keep you in mind that you're black people and that you're still under white people and that we can kill you anytime we want, that we have control over your life. That's what they're trying to push when they show you these images. That's why they do that. That's why they'll show you ritualistically at certain times a police officer, you'll see in the news, a white police officer shot a black person, because that's meant to invoke fear in you, especially in the men, because the men are always the threat. The men are always the threat. The men are always the threat, not the women, the men. This is why they want black females to raise young black boys without fathers. Because they know that the father will raise you up to be a man. They know the father will teach you and guide you. They know that the mother can only do but so much. They know that the mother will emasculate you. A lot of times on the plantation, they was doing that. They would sell the father off and keep the mother and the children. They would do that a lot. They would sell the father off. Right, once he got to a certain age and whatnot, or the boy got to be a certain age, because they figured after the father was done, or they would do this, they would just have a slave. They would have a buck. They would have a buck go from plantation to plantation, impregnating the young slave girls and whatnot. And these sick bastards would watch as the buck slaves would go and impregnate the slave girls and whatnot, get them pregnant so that they would have a bunch of young bucks so they could train them to be slaves. But they didn't have the father stay around the children because they didn't want the fathers raising the children. The white man wanted to raise the children. They wanted to raise the black children. And that's what they do today. Don't you see this is still being done today? Think about it. The so-called black woman will get pregnant by one of these niggas out here, one of these bedbuck niggas out here, one of these hip-hop niggas out here. She'll get pregnant, and the nigga will go off somewhere and be looking for some next piece of vagina to climb in to get pregnant. What happens? She goes on public assistance, or she gets some kind of help. So then that's the system is the white man, the form of the white slave master stepping in, and he's feeding them, giving them all kinds of Similac, which probably got all kinds of hormones in it to emasculate them, and they getting the public assistance money. They getting she's sending them to school to be indoctrinated and everything. You see? So all this plays into it. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. The black man is only used to impregnate the black woman, and then the child is going to be used later on if they don't turn the child out to be a damn emasculate the child to be a homosexual or something like that. They're going to use the child later for either sports or use the child for the prison industrial complex. You see? And or they'll try to say if they special enough, they smart enough, they get through school, they can have a profession. But the real goal is to try to push them to be prisoners or be criminals and prisoners or in the military. That's the real goal for you so-called black men. That's the real goal. They don't want you to do anything where there's a real profession. I mean, you can go to get a profession, but they don't really want that. Now, I'm going to take a call. 718, you're on the air.
Menzak, could you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Yes, Linnea Minjaz. I found the definition of America, 1828 dictionary. Okay. Yes, Linnea Minjaz. I found the definition of America, 1828 dictionary. Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, it says.
Go ahead, read it.
Yes, it says. What is that? Hey, echo. Okay. Okay, America. Okay, America. Native Americans originally applied to the Aboriginals or the copper-colored races found here by the Europeans, but now is applied to the descendants of the Europeans born here in America. And this is 1828.
Wow. Read that one more time so they can hear you.
I'm sorry, I'll do it again. Sorry about that.
Yeah, got it.
Okay, the definition of America, the 1828 Webster Dictionary. A Native American originally applied to the Aboriginals or copper-colored races found here by the Europeans, but now apply to the descendants of Europeans born in America.
Wow. So basically what that's saying is American or America, the term America or American was applied to copper-colored people here in this society.
Right. Copper, yep. Right.
I told you. I knew that they called America after the people that was here already. You see, that's not after the white man. That didn't come from the white man. They made reference to the people who were already here in the society, the Amir Inca people. That is black people, so-called black people, the bronze people, the Amir Inca people. That's where that comes from. Yes. I'm telling you, share it on my page when you get a chance to share it in the DOM group. Share it. I want everybody to see that I'm going to share it on my page because I'm going to constantly make reference to that and where I'm going later with this. But thank you for calling in, brother.
All right. Listen.
All right. All right, we're going to take another quick break, and we'll be back. But that just go to show you right there. They called America, see, the white man already knew, because what they originally did was they already named this place America after the people that was here, the Amir Inca people, and they were just uniting certain states or colonies in the Americas, or the Amir Inca territory. They were uniting states. That's where the whole term of United States of America or Amir Inca come from. Then they tried to make it, they had to attach it to themselves. Because America is not named for Caucasians. It's not named after no Amerigo Vespucci. That is a lie. And the brother just shows you in the Webster Dictionary, 1828. They just tell you the white man don't never really do away with things. He'll keep it, but simple-minded people not going to look for it. We'll be right back. What America really is, like I said, if you take the word America off, because like I told you, they didn't want to promote the Americas as an African continent or part of an African country or African continent. They didn't want to promote America as an African continent or a so-called black continent. I should say it like that. They didn't want to say that this was a continent because they already had their lines of identification set up already. They already decided that over here in this place, this so-called continent called Africa is where all you black people from. Over here in this place called Asia is where all you yellow Asian slanted-eyed people are from, you mongoloids. Over here in Europe is where us Caucasians are, which is really no such thing as Europe. That's all Asia. You understand? There's no such thing as Europe. All of us being called Europe is really Asia. Okay, technically, all that's Asia. All right? And, again, even England and the UK belong to black people because all the so-called black people in the UK are there because of the Moors. They're there because of the Moors. They're not there because of slavery. They're there because of the Moors. There's always been black people in Europe. They've always been. And all those people who are in the UK and in Europe, they were the descendants of the Moors that was in those areas. You see, you always had way before the white man came into those societies and started mixing in and taking over and things like that, because that's how they always do. They always come in, wherever they go, they come in with a plan to gentrify the area. They come in trying to be your friend. Next thing you know, they're setting up a system or groups, and next thing you know, they colonizing, because that's the mind of the European or the so-called white man. That's the mind. He has a colony mindset, like an ant. I told you they work off an ant frequency. So their mindset is always going to be to colonize and get their people together. And they're going to set up a caste system. They're not coming here like a lot of our people would think when they came into the Americas. Oh, they just coming here, they just coming here, and they're just immigrating here because our people was the first people to start. We was the first ones that let the immigrants in. Our people let the immigrants in, starting with the so-called Asians, which crossed the Bering Straits, and on to the white man and everybody else that came here. We were the first ones that started letting the damn immigrants in here. We the ones that met. We were the first ones. We were the first ones who was meeting all the immigrants that started coming here. Wherever our people are, all these so-called the white man, all the rest of these people gonna follow. The Asians, all of them. Wherever you are, they're gonna come to where you are. Let me take a call. 917, you're on there. (917). All right, nothing from 917. I don't hear you. All right, nothing. Because they know, and they come where we are, because they know wherever our people are, instinctively, wherever land we on, it's going to be rich land. Wherever our people are, because that's just what it is with our people. Wherever our people are, wherever our people work land, we're going to make it rich. Because that's just in us. We're elemental people. You see, the so-called Indians that was showing them how to plant and do all that was black people. It wasn't these East Indians. Like I said, all these depictions they give of these East Indian looking I'm not saying you didn't have them, but with the majority of your so-called Indians were nothing but black and Asians mixed. That's all. That was black and Asians mixed. And they went to certain tribes. They went to certain tribes as opposed to others. Right? And they'll show you, in certain tribes, they'll show you the more Asian-looking Indians. The ones who they decided to call Indians because they didn't want to. Because every time they would paint pictures and draw images, they didn't want certain things, certain things they didn't want, preserved in history, or they would preserve it, and it wasn't nothing to them. But then when they started doing the racial thing, then they started altering it. They started to whitewash the history. The ones that really taught them how to grow and plant things here were so-called black people. It wasn't these Indians, these Asiatic-looking Indians. You see, because if that was so, like I said, how many farms you see, who's basically known for farming the land? It's really black people that are known for farming the land. It's not just when you think farmer, the white man put his face up there, but first and foremost, when you thought farmer, you didn't think Indian. Whenever you think farmer in this society, you don't think Indians. You think black people before you think Indians. When you think farmer, tell me I'm wrong. Do anybody think farmer, or anybody ever notice whenever they show you the so-called Indians, they claim they point all of these, they plant all of, they show the white man how to plant corn and do all this other stuff here and yams and everything else. But notice, they never show you any Indians being agricultural. Did they ever show you that? I never seen them show. Every time they show Indians, they always show them in the damn wilderness. Setting up and having teepees and stuff. They never show you Indians on farms. Now do that. Tell me I'm wrong. Somebody in my chat room, have they ever showed you an image of Indians on farms? You've never seen that. You've always seen them set up somewhere with tents and things up, and they've always lived like nomadic, like in the woods. So where was they learning all this farming from? Where was they learning how to plant things from? You got to be around, you got to be settled somewhere for crops to grow for you. You can't just plant crops and be moving from place to place. So if you planting crops like that, you got to farm. They don't show you Indians as agricultural people because they're not. The agricultural people they talking about who was here, who know how to do things, was black people. So-called black people, was not no so-called Indians. Because they would show you that. You barely gonna find an Indian farmer. You'll find a black farmer. You see? You'll find a black one. Because we always knew how to, farming is really associated with us. Farming is more associated with so-called black people than it would be with some so-called Indians. Right or wrong? Tell me I'm wrong. Farming is more associated with black people. You don't think Indians when you think farming. You think black people before you think about them. So that tells you who basically showed the white man how to farm and do all the things they do so they could survive when they came here. But we're gonna close. Let me go ahead and answer these questions before we get out of here. Why will so-called black people always be seen as a threat in this society? Because you're the real natives of this society. You are the real natives. You are the only Americans here. America was named after black people. It was not named for no Amerigo Vespucci. That is a damn lie, because if it was, they would have Amerigo Vespucci's birthday as a holiday. You know, anything white people can think of, give themselves a pat on the back for, congratulations, celebrate their birthday, or make them some sort of national heroes, they would. Why not Amerigo Vespucci, who you supposedly named this country after, or this continent after? You give more praise to Christopher Columbus. If that was so, then why didn't you name this country Columbia? They did not name this country after Amerigo Vespucci. That's a lie. That is a lie. You see, he just happened to be his name just happened to be Amerigo, and he went right into what fit into the white story that they was trying to retell. That's all. His name went right into the story about what they were. And if you probably look even further, his name probably ain't even Amerigo. You see, probably some other thing that they probably try to make it like America. Probably Amerigo or something like that. They try to probably make it that. There's no telling. They'll do anything. These devils will do anything to try to make the history fit their narrative. Is it because of slavery? No, it's not because of slavery. It has nothing to do with it. It's because you're the natives here. And slavery comes from kidnapping black people who were already here in America. I told y'all that, and that's going to come out more and more. They showed you in the Solomon Northup story, but y'all didn't pay attention. Is it because skin color? No, it is not. Because if that's the case, why you don't see them attacking the East Indians? They just as dark as us, but they not us. I told you they got the fur, and that's where they really come from. Again, why are they not attacking the East Indians? Why don't they attack the Asians? They not white. But they got white status here. So miss me with it's a color thing, it's because of the color of my skin. Why they ain't beating up the East Indians? Why the East Indians got stores in Mississippi and all over the place and hotels, but you never see them being harassed by the white man? Is it because of racial identity? No. Again, it's because of national identity. We are the natives here, the real Americans. Is it because we really are another species? Well, yeah, we are the almond race, not the human race. We are the almond race that predate the human race. We were here first, and we created the humans to work for us. And that's another thing they know. And over time, all these things I'm sharing with you in the future will be publicly noted. Know that. This is prophecy being shared with you tonight. And that's it. We're going to close out in the name of Amen by the power. I'll see you guys back here tomorrow. We're going to close out in the name of Amen by the power of Amen. And Amen we trust, and Amen we thank, and in Amen we continue forward forever. I am the intellectual NUBEN MENKARAYZZ. This has been Mentellect Radio. See you guys back here tomorrow. Same time, same station. Good night.
Rising out the black race to the white race, out the black race to the white race. It's the republic of intellect, black race to the white race. If it's hell, then it's hell us. They tried everything just to spell us. Fed us religion, gave us fake gods. Through all of that, we beat the odds. Now we coming together under one flag. Colors red, gold, and blue. Superman, Superwoman, that's me and you.